Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the Girls in podcast series, live from London today. We have a very exciting guest who joins us all the way from the States and is really kind of taking the travel tech industry by storm. I mean, for me, one of the biggest probably growing industries in technology, probably alongside medical tech maybe, has to be travel tech itself. I think for myself, I travel quite a lot and I'm always searching for something that will make my life that much easier, but also guides me to something different. But also when I'm searching for flights, hotels, I'm always really searching for a bargain, something that is of good value, and also giving me that unique experience as well. I've followed this kind of individual's journey for a while now, not only the individual but the startup. And if I could give a virtual high five, it would be right now, because not only that, I just discovered something quite cool about their app, which can sit on my desktop, which is also pretty awesome. I think there's a lot of ideas in this space, so hats off to anyone who can do well kind of in this travel tech industry itself. So I think let's jump straight into it. The individual has been described as a thought leader of the travel startup world. So, I mean, I'm really excited to be joined by the wonderful Gillian Morris, founder and CEO for the travel app Hitlist. Welcome, Gillian, to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so which part of the world are you kind of contacting from for us today?
I'm in San Francisco.
Nice. And what's the weather like there today?
Absolutely beautiful and sunny, like it is like 60% of the time.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Very jealous right now. So, I mean, before I kind of jump into any questions, I think one thing I have to ask you is, where is the best place you've travelled to and truly been blown away by, would you say?
I get this question all the time, and it's so hard, what's the best place for a relaxing getaway? What's the best place for this? That I have to say the one place I keep coming back to and really love is Georgia, the country. So it's a small country and not that hard to get to. There are great connections through Europe and through Istanbul from the States. And it's spectacularly beautiful. The skiing there, it's the Alps, it puts the Alps to shame in some ways. And everyone's very friendly and the food is delicious and it's quite low cost and it's just very unique. So I always urge people to go there. I think it's really overlooked and underrated.
Amazing. So, I mean, when I was looking at kind of the journey to Hitlist and your journey itself, I mean, you must get asked so many questions on where's the best place to go, what's the best bargain? Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, I do, yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did Hitlist come about? What was the vision? What did you want to achieve when you set out starting of the journey?
There's a long and a short answer to that. I'll start with the shorter one, and that is simply that, I mean, I knew I wanted to work in travel. I am a huge believer in the power of this industry to drive economic and social change. And so I was playing around with a lot of different ideas, and I've always been the travel agent for all my friends. And one thing I found in particular was I lived in Turkey for a long time, and when I was there, people always said they wanted to come and visit, and then they never really did. And so I started sending people emails whenever I saw cheap flights, and I would say, you said you wanted to come, it's 50 quid round trip from London right now, book this ticket and come and visit me. And they would. It was kind of amazing.
Wow.
So if I just sort of did the work for them, and if they had a trusted expert recommending things to them, they would be much more likely to book. And so I thought at a certain point people started saying, oh, can you let me know when there are cheap flights to Sweden? Can you let me know when there are cheap flights to Austin? And so I was doing all of these searches, and I learned how to code and started automating sending these emails out to people whenever there were cheap flights to New York or whatever. And at a certain point, I just thought, I can make this self-service, we can scale this and make this accessible to everyone, not just random friends of mine.
Amazing. So, I mean, is your team quite big? How do you go about finding the best deal of a flight? Obviously, don't give away too many of your secrets, but...
No, there's... The secret is an incredibly involved algorithm that we've been developing for 3.5 years. So there's not much that I'm going to be able to give away over a podcast, in the sense that it's just been a lot of trial and error and experimentation. So we use a lot of machine learning to determine what is a good price based on historical fares, based on how popular the route is, how popular that particular date pair is. Obviously, something that's a $50 round trip flight on a Tuesday to Thursday is not as valuable to most people as it would be if it were Friday to Sunday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So, we've built up this way of scoring the flights that we look through, and we go through about 50 million flights worth of data a day.
Wow.
And qualify them all, and then we deliver personalized alerts. So that's, I think, one of the really big distinctions between us and most travel deal sites, where they're just sort of saying, like, oh, here's a cheap flight to Majorca, here's a cheap flight to the Canary Islands, and you might not be interested in the cheap flight to Majorca, but you might really want to know about a cheap flight to Nice. And we try and learn that about you and only deliver the stuff that's really relevant to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I find I've always kind of previously used websites like Skyscanner, for example. And whenever I sort of go on their website, it's always countries in Europe. It never takes any sort of analytics from what I've previously searched, because it will be a lot of countries which I've never searched for before, kind of in Google. And actually, I was using the new sort of tool on the Google Chrome, which you've plugged in for users, where actually when you open a new tab, a new sort of offer will pop up, which I thought was really cool, because obviously not only the image entices you, but also the cost is quite enticing as well. So
yeah,
really bad.
So you're describing WanderTab, our Chrome extension, which is, you can find it at wandertab.com. It's very simple. Just it turns every new tab that you open, it shows you a beautiful picture and how much it costs to get there. And that was funny. It was actually something that we built in a weekend as like at a hackathon, which is these sort of like weekend-long contests that you can do. And so we built the basic version in a weekend, and people just absolutely loved it, and we've continuously refined it. But we get so much interesting data from WanderTab in terms of what people click on, what they're interested in, and we use that. It all sort of feeds back into the algorithm to help us get better at making recommendations.
Sure, that's really good. And do you see this further, kind of going further than just sort of flight recommendations? Where would you like to see this go potentially?
I'd absolutely love this. I would love Hitlist to become the default place you come to plan and book all your travel. I mean, I think there's a huge market out there, and flights is just one jumping off point. We do offer some hotels, and we're beginning to experiment with package deals. And so, all aspects of the travel journey, we want to help you get there and help you feel good about your purchase and like you're getting a good deal.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you look at yourself, when you're constantly searching for, say, a hotel, so I would maybe go to, say, Skyscanner for flights, and then hotels, it would be maybe something like Trivago or Booking.com. But I still, as much as individuals would advertise saying, oh, we find the cheapest flights, etc., you still always look at numerous different ones. So it's interesting to know the analytics behind kind of Hitlist and how you're searching through all this data, really, and also looking at what are, as an individual, your sort of preference of where you'd like to travel. I assume you kind of look at budget as well, kind of from previous sort of bookings or whatever. So it's quite interesting. And does the booking go through, how does it work in terms of if they find a deal through your website? Does it go through to the airline's website, or is it all done within Hitlist?
So we are sort of like Skyscanner in this regard. We're in the industry, it's called a meta search engine. So you do your searching with us, but ultimately you'll complete the booking with Expedia or Opodo or any of these sort of online travel agencies, or directly with Lufthansa or whoever. So we refer you through, and we get a small of that booking exactly as Skyscanner would. You're always getting the cheapest price at retail, but you'll book with one of our partners ultimately.
Right, great. So anyway, let's move on from Hitlist. I mean, obviously you're very absorbed in the tech world, not only the tech world, but I just found out obviously that you were an opera singer back in the day. So it'd be great to know kind of how technology has influenced the way you've worked. Are there any sort of limitations? I mean, you're in the hub of startup world. What's that like being in San Francisco?
San Francisco is an interesting place. It's I have to say I appreciate it rather than really loving it. I think it's a great place to get work done. It's a great place to be for this phase of my life where, everything is, the most important thing to me is working on Hitlist. It's not great if you love culture, work-life balance, changes in season and all that type of stuff. But it's a fascinating place where unquestionably people are thinking about things here 5 years before they seem to think about them anywhere else. Yeah. And that's really interesting. And so I'm fascinated by San Francisco. Is it where I'll be in the long term? I kind of doubt it. I love London, actually. I love New York. But you asked me how technology has affected my life, and that's one thing that I do find once I started learning how to code, you sort of realize how incredibly empowered you are to address issues where it used to be, I hate how clunky the government driver's license renewal website is, and I would just hate that. And now I'm like, wait, I know how I could actually make that better, and if I wanted to, I could build a better version of it. Or I could automate a script to go through all of these things for me so I don't have to. Various things like this. So it's an incredibly empowering and exciting thing to learn how tech works, and that's why I think it's also important to see it getting taught more and more in schools and at earlier ages, because it gives you this tremendous sense of ability.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree there. I mean, one of the kind of ideas around Girls In, as you know, Gillian, it's very much early stage with Girls In, but it's that whole idea that a girl, if they wake up, they have an idea of, oh my God, this will make my life that much easier, just how you explained, that they feel that they have the tools, the kind of toolkit around them to just go out there and have a go. And this whole idea of coding, it unlocks so much potential, especially with the way kind of startups are shaping, the way that tech startups specifically, I don't know about San Francisco, I'm sure it's quite similar to London, but technology startups are just overtaking the London tech kind of startup scene at the moment, and it's really interesting the way it's going to shape kind of in the next few years, especially with the new sort of government coming in as well. Our mayor wants a lot of kind of tech startups to just be based in London. They're kind of spawning out slowly, but not quick enough, really. I mean, as you know, I'm based out in Coventry, and there's not enough startups here. There's not enough young people getting involved, so they all tend to move to that hub in London, which is a shame, but hopefully kind of keeping people connected through technology, it can help them kind of grow and learn skills.
It's also something you can think of it like someone going to university. They'll go to London and work in a startup, or go to Silicon Valley and work in a startup for a couple of years, but then hopefully, go back out to wherever they came from and bring those skills.
Yeah, 100%. And bring their ideas really as well, kind of gain those skills they need, and then start applying that to any ideas they have. I think one of the best things about working in a startup and that sort of whole environment is that your ideas are constantly kind of going back and forth. I mean, I worked in the corporate world for about a year or so, and you don't have time to think about anything but that corporate world. But then when you're in a startup world, you think about everything that could just make your life that much easier. So yeah, it's really, really interesting.
It is.
So I mean, if one question I'd like to give to you as well is, if you could give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Well, one thing I really wish I'd been exposed to earlier on, or taken seriously, is this idea of being an entrepreneur as a career path.
Yeah.
I think I in school I was a pretty good test taker and student and all this, and so sort of like, oh, obviously you'll become a doctor or a lawyer or something, and I just didn't have the idea that I could go out and start a company, and even if the company didn't succeed, I would learn a lot in the process and get better at it and start a new one. And there's also, a lot of people don't even talk about, how could you possibly support yourself when you're starting a company? But in reality, there's actually a lot of infrastructure out there that can make it simpler to do that. And I look at some of my peers who starting companies when they were 14 or 16 or something like this. So they got a decade's head start on me. And so I just feel like I'm playing catch up sometimes, even though I'm not that old. I'm 31. So it is funny. So I wish I'd looked at that more as a kid, this idea of entrepreneurship as a viable thing that I could have gained some skills in and done internships and apprenticeships with startups rather than sort of, I think in the summers in university, my summer jobs were rowing coach, admin at a university study abroad program where I was basically like stapling things together. You're sort of not really using my brain or my abilities very much.
Yeah, and it's always funny when you're in those situations, you have those moments where you're like, yeah, this will completely help me kind of in the next 3 or 4 years. It will come in handy one time on my CV. When actually you wish that in this day and age, I always tell my younger siblings, when you have a spare summer, just reach out to startup companies, because even within a month, you'll probably learn more than what you ever will kind of working in a corporate environment where everything's just kind of, you stick to what you know, really. So yeah, that's good advice, I think. Definitely be more entrepreneurial is probably the phrase there. So I suppose another question would be, what's fascinated you the most when it comes to kind of progression for females in the world of startups and businesses itself, really?
So I have a kind of complicated approach to this question. So I've always been a tomboy, and when I first started working in startups and first came to Silicon Valley about 4 years ago, it was odd because I was, at that stage I was barely more than an idea, and I would go to these meetups and there would be, maybe every other meetup there would be one other woman in the room. There were just so few women there. Yeah. And then the woman would invariably come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, we're women, we must work together, we must support each other. And I was sort of like, well, what are you working on? And she'd be like, oh, you know how in Clueless they have that thing where you can move your closet around and it, like, a computer helps you match your outfits? And I'd be like, that's a dumb idea. I don't really, we're not peers. But, and so I used to have this attitude that it was sort of, in some ways, our fault for not stepping up and being there and working on more important and practical ideas. Mm-hmm. And that's a position that I really don't hold anymore. I've realized that there really are some incredible systemic things that encourage boys to go down certain paths and girls to go down others, and that we really do need to be incredibly proactive and about encouraging more women in the entrepreneurial fields, even if they're doing, pointless, clueless, matching outfit suggestion. And so I've become much more vocal about certainly trying to reach out and be active in the entrepreneurial community among other women. I've also tried to prioritize hiring women and finding people of ability and amplifying them as well. One thing that always gets called out rightly is when you have manels at conferences where it's just a bunch of men. Especially egregious is when there's actually, and this is unbelievable, at a really high-profile conference recently where there was a panel about women in tech, and it was 5 men. It was like, what on earth are you thinking? So we do have to talk about these issues. We do have to bring them up, and we do have to be encouraging. One thing that I found, I took a pledge when I joined this community in New York called Grand Central Tech, which is a community of New York-based startups. I used to be based in New York before we moved out here. And it's a very simple commitment that for every open position you have, you commit to interview, not necessarily hire, but at least interview at least one female minority or veteran. That's really good. And which are all underrepresented communities in tech. And when I heard this idea, I was like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. And then I looked back at my own hiring history. And at that point, I'd hired 9 people. I'd interviewed 33 people. Every single person was a white or Indian man.
Wow.
Every single person that I'd interviewed and therefore also hired. And I was, it's true that I wasn't getting a lot of resumes from people of other genders and races and all this type of stuff. But I also realized that even when I was getting the resumes, I wasn't really considering them fully. So I thought that was really interesting. Since I've made the active effort to at least interview an underrepresented person for every role, I've ended up hiring a lot more women and a lot more people of color.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's an initiative that I've heard of before, actually, and I think it works quite well, especially having kind of a diverse sort of kind of people coming to the table together. I think it gives different opinions, especially within the travel tech startup world. I mean, I think you need voices from all angles, all kind of different backgrounds, different sexes, and I think that's really important. I mean, I come from a background where I've just had kind of directors and managers and team leaders who are all male. So sometimes it can be quite a narrow sort of viewpoint on situations. So sometimes it's hard to get your voice heard. But no, that's a really good kind of point to make as well. So I suppose it'd be great to know what's on the roadmap for Hitlist then for 2017 and 2018. Have you got any exciting plans or kind of announcements really?
Yeah, well, I would love to hear more about your startup as well, if you want to talk about that. But and see if there are any ways I can help out there. But for Hitlist, we have a new version coming out in June. We tend to, sorry, this is the functional elements of Hitlist have been kind of static on the top level, like on the interaction, and so the one that's coming out soon is going to be, it's hard to describe exactly how until you experience it, but it's just in terms of the flow of information, we hope it's going to be much more intuitive than the app already is, and so I'm very excited to release that. It should be out by the first or second week of June worldwide. And it'll also include more package deals, which I think is something that's particularly impactful in Europe. So Americans don't tend to buy as many package deals as Europeans do. So I'm excited to see how that performs. So you can have things where you're choosing not just your flight, but having your entire vacation taken care of.
Right. Yeah, that would be pretty amazing. Yeah, so I mean, thank you so much for kind of joining me on this call. It's been a really kind of interesting conversation. And yeah, I wish you all the best for Hitlist. I'm definitely going to be having a look at kind of the releases of Hitlist, the different sort of avenues you'll go down, and any kind of ideas for coming to London, opening up an office here, or.
I would love to open an office in London. I've always loved the city. Not in the short term, but you never know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks everyone. Thank you everyone for listening, and stay tuned. And if you want to follow Hitlist on Twitter, I think their Twitter handle is Hitlist_app, APP. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.